Hello, I'm Colin, and I'm a historian. The high-heeled historian. I'm sure you know that. You've probably already followed my exploits in Florence and Venice, but if you haven't, drop everything and check out my channel. For this installment, I've come all the way to Sicily to tell you about a rogue and scoundrel of ancient Rome, Gaius Verus. Verus was born in about 114 BC. He was an aristocrat and a member of the Senate during a period known as the Late Roman Republic. This was the days before powerful emperors, when the Senate, or at least certain factions within it, dominated Rome. Now Verus was an aristocrat, so he was rich, right? But being an ambitious political figure in Rome at that time meant if you wanted to climb up the political ladder, there was an awful lot of bribery involved. And the higher you climbed, the more expensive it became. You see the problem? Poor little rich boy. It was simply unsustainable, and it threatened to bankrupt him. There were, however, ways to get your money back. And the best one was to get appointed as a governor to a province in Rome's ever-expanding empire. All you had to do was put in a year in a dull civil office in Rome, and voila, your province awaits. Here, you could use your position to line your own pockets, and it was a rare governor who didn't do so. Obviously, the provincials weren't very happy about it, but usually Rome had an army posted nearby, and the courts in Rome tended to be deaf to their complaints, so the abuse continued. Now, our boy Verus had already shown something of his true colours. Earlier in his career, he supported a guy called Marius in a civil war he was fighting with Sulla, one of the many that rocked the later Roman Republic and eventually led to its downfall. Anyway, Verus originally supported Team Marius, but when he realised Sulla was going to win, the dirty rat swapped sides. And not only that, he took the pay chest of the legion he was attached to with him. He wanted to ingratiate himself with Sulla, who offered him a parcel of land in Beneventum and protection. Next, Verus got a job on the staff of the governor of Cilicia. That's an area in modern-day Turkey, where he's said to have stripped as much as he possibly could from the local population. You can imagine. Of course, the governor, Gaius Cornelius Dolabella, was up to exactly the same thing, and when Dolabella's enemies tried to ruin him in Rome through a prosecution for extortion, Verus changed sides again, in exchange for all charges against him being dropped and a pardon for his crimes. Outrageous! Then, in 74 BC, Verus bribed his way to a praetorship, the second most important public office in Rome, one down from a consulship. It must have cost him a fortune. Whilst in office, he made sure to further the interests of the more conservative factions within the Senate. These were people opposed to people power. That did the trick. The call came, and he was appointed to the governorship of Sicily. Now this was a prize job and an ideal way to make a lot of money fast. You see, until AD 30, when Egypt became part of the Roman Empire, this island supplied most of the grain that fed the capital of the empire. So it was a rich province and a very important one for the welfare of Roman citizens. If the grain didn't arrive, people would go hungry, and you can bet your high heels they would blame the Senate for the problem. Beautiful, isn't it? That's the Temple of Concord at Agrigento. But for Verus, Sicily was simply a way to enrich himself, and boy did he enrich himself. It was said that the depredations of Verus outstripped those of any war Sicily had been involved in over the last 200 years. He bankrupted farmers and tax collectors alike through massive taxation and contract rigging. He robbed temples and private residences, taking treasure wherever he found it. No one and nothing was safe. Verus wanted everything, all of the time. He happened to be governor while Spartacus was leading the slave rebellion on mainland Italy, and he saw this as another opportunity to raise funds, supposedly to quash the rebellion in Italy, but you guessed it, the money never left his coffers. He would also extort money from slave owners. He would claim that a slave had joined the rebellion and have them sentenced to crucifixion. He would then accept bribes from the owner to ensure a happy ending. The slave was off the hook, and no suspicion of disloyalty fell on the slave owner. He even invented slaves and said they'd run off to join the rebellion. He demanded that the owner produce the slave, and when they couldn't, he had them thrown into prison. How did they get out again? Have a wild guess. However, when he returned to Rome after his year in office, the Sicilians immediately made a formal complaint, and a young but up-and-coming Roman politician agreed to take on the case. This was Marcus Tullius Cicero. Cicero was well regarded in Sicily as an honest man. It was a brave undertaking, however, because Verus was supported by a large and powerful faction within the Senate. If you were betting on the outcome, you'd have put your money on Gaius Verus winning. Still, Verus can't have felt entirely secure, because he tried by various means to get the trial postponed until the following year, when he knew one of his friends would have been the judge. The current judge was regarded as honest and incorruptible, definitely not the kind of man Verus would have been comfortable with in charge. Fortunately, his tactics failed, and the case began in August with one of the finest and most devastating speeches Cicero ever made. In this speech, he barely mentioned Verus's crimes in Sicily. Instead, he destroyed his reputation by recounting his earlier life. He also had plenty to say about Verus's attempts to delay the trial. This is Archimedes, and Cicero was a big fan. Anyway, at the time of the trial, there were moves afoot to widen the composition of juries, to include the rich but non-senatorial equestrian class. To the Senate, this was an outrage, but Cicero turned it to his advantage. He argued that to turn in a not guilty verdict against such a blatant wrongdoer from their own class would not only look bad, it might bring the entire house down. It was a powerful speech, and both Verus and his defence lawyer knew they'd lost before they even opened their mouths. There was nothing for it but to flee. So Verus left Rome for Massilia, modern-day Marseille, never to return. Good riddance to bad rubbish. Verus eventually got his comeuppance in 43 BC, when he refused to hand over a statue of his to Mark Antony, who wanted it. As a result, Mark Antony had him killed. What goes around comes around, they do say. So, my friends, let that be a lesson to you. Don't get too big for your boots. Boots? Now there's a thought. I'm off to see what Sicily has to offer. Ciao!